They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine steaming hot, wrapped in dumpling skin, served with a smile. The rain fell hard that evening, turning the downtown street market into a maze of umbrellas and neon reflections. Steam rose from bamboo baskets as Emma Hartley's practiced hands folded another perfect dumpling. 28 years old, wearing a simple apron over faded jeans, she looked like just another struggling vendor fighting to make ends meet. But appearances can be deceiving. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Fold, crimp, seal. Each dumpling identical to the last. The rhythmic motion had become meditation over the past 2 years. The same 2 years she'd spent planning, waiting, preparing for this exact moment. The black Mercedes came to a halt in the market traffic. Through the rain-streaked window, she could see him, Alexander Sterling. His sharp jaw was set in irritation, designer suit perfectly tailored, cold blue eyes scanning the chaos outside with barely concealed contempt. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. After all this time, after all this planning, the car door opened. Alexander Sterling stepped out into the rain, and Emma forced herself to breathe. He was taller than she remembered from the photographs, more imposing in person. His presence commanded attention even here, among the humble market stalls and working-class vendors. He looked completely out of place in his $3,000 suit, yet he moved through the crowd with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. The aroma of her cooking caught him mid-stride. She watched his expression shift, irritation giving way to curiosity. His eyes followed the scent, searching, until they landed on her. Their gazes met across the steaming baskets. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The rain, the crowd, the noise, it all faded into background static. Emma felt the connection like an electric shock, something primal and unexpected that made her breath catch. Then she remembered who he was, what he'd done. Her smile flickered, just for a second, but she caught it, forced it back into place. Warm, inviting, innocent. He moved toward her stall as if pulled by an invisible thread. "You're getting soaked," Emma said, her voice carefully crafted, soft, slightly concerned, with just a hint of shyness. "Come, stand under the awning." Alexander Sterling looked at her like he'd never been offered simple kindness before. Something unreadable crossed his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. He glanced at the steaming baskets. "What do you recommend?" Emma's hands didn't shake as she selected a dumpling with her tongs. "For you? Something special. Something you'll never forget." She didn't know how true those words would become. The small apartment was dark when Emma finally returned home, her clothes damp from the rain, her hands still smelling of ginger and garlic. She locked the door behind her and let the mask fall away. Her legs felt weak. She leaned against the door, closing her eyes, letting herself feel it all, the anger, the pain, the fear that had been her constant companions for 10 years. When she opened her eyes, she was staring at the wall. The entire surface was covered in newspaper clippings, printed articles, photographs. Alexander Sterling's face smiled back at her from a dozen different magazine covers. Self-made billionaire at 30. Sterling Global Industries dominates tech sector. The man who rewrote the rules of business. In the center of it all was a different photograph. Smaller, older. A family portrait taken 15 years ago. Emma at 18, her younger brother Daniel at 12, and their father, Robert Hartley, with his arm around them both. His smile was genuine, his eyes kind. He'd been a good man. A dead man. Emma's vision blurred. She'd cried so many times over the years that she thought she'd run out of tears, but they still came. Hot and bitter. The memories crashed over her like waves. She was 18 again, coming home from her first semester of college, excited to surprise her father. The house had been too quiet. She'd called out, heard nothing, climbed the stairs with growing dread. The study door had been open. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, but she could still see it. Her father's body, the empty pill bottles, the bankruptcy notices scattered across his desk, the suicide note in his careful handwriting. "I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you. Forgive me." But it wasn't his fault. It had never been his fault. It was Alexander Sterling's. Robert Hartley had been a successful entrepreneur, a mentor to young businessmen who needed guidance. One of those young men had been Alexander Sterling, hungry, ambitious, brilliant. Robert had taken him under his wing, taught him everything he knew, treated him like the son he'd never had. And Alexander had repaid that kindness with betrayal. Emma moved to her laptop, pulling up the files she'd collected over the years. The evidence was all there. 15 years ago, Robert Hartley's company had been on the verge of securing a major government contract, a deal that would have set them up for life. But someone had leaked their proprietary technology to a competitor. Someone had sabotaged their presentation. Someone had spread rumors about Robert's financial instability. That someone had been Alexander Sterling. He'd stolen the contract, used Robert's own innovations to build Sterling Global Industries, and left his mentor bankrupt and broken. Within 6 months, Robert Hartley was dead. Within a year, Alexander Sterling was a millionaire. Within 5 years, a billionaire. The world saw a self-made success story. Emma saw a murderer who'd never faced justice. The apartment door opened, and Daniel walked in. At 22, he still had the look of someone who'd grown up too fast, shadows under his eyes, a wariness in his posture that spoke of old trauma. Their father's death had hit him hardest. He'd been just 12 years old when he'd found the note. "You saw him," Daniel said. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. "Did he recognize you?" "How could he?" Emma's voice came out harder than she intended. "He never bothered to learn his victims' names. We were just collateral damage." Daniel sat down beside her, looking at the wall of clippings. "Sometimes I wonder if Dad would want this." "Dad's not here to want anything," Emma said sharply. Then, softer, "That's the point." They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "I found something. Sterling Global is holding a charity gala next week. $500 a plate. All proceeds going to his foundation." Emma's head snapped up. "What kind of foundation?" "Business rehabilitation. Helping entrepreneurs recover from bankruptcy." The irony was so thick Emma could taste it. Alexander Sterling hosting a charity for the very people he'd destroyed. The hypocrisy made her blood boil. "It's perfect," she said slowly. "The perfect opportunity." Daniel looked at her, concern evident in his eyes. "Emma, are you sure about this? Once you start down this path." "I started down this path 10 years ago," Emma interrupted. "When I found Dad's body. When I had to drop out of college to take care of you. When I spent nights working 3 jobs just to keep us fed." She stood, her jaw set with determination. "Alexander Sterling took everything from us. It's time he learned what that feels like." But as she stared at her father's photograph, she couldn't shake the memory of Alexander's eyes meeting hers across the market. The unexpected connection. The moment that had felt like fate. She pushed the feeling aside. There was no room for weakness. No room for doubt. This was justice. This was necessary. This was revenge. 3 days passed, and Emma tried to convince herself she was relieved. Alexander Sterling had gotten his dumpling, satisfied his curiosity, and moved on with his billionaire life. She could continue her planning without the complication of him actually showing interest. Then, on the 4th day, he came back. It was afternoon, the lunch rush just ending. Emma was cleaning her station when a familiar voice said, "I was hoping you'd still be here." She looked up to find Alexander Sterling standing at her stall. But something was different. No suit this time, just dark jeans and a simple black sweater. No driver hovering nearby. No phone pressed to his ear. Just him, looking almost normal. Almost human. "You came back," Emma said, proud that her voice stayed steady. "I did." He glanced at the menu board. "That dumpling haunted me for 3 days. I had to know if it was as good as I remembered, or if I'd just been hungry." Emma felt a strange flutter in her chest that she firmly ignored. She turned to her baskets, preparing a fresh order. "And what's the verdict?" "I'm here, aren't I?" She plated the dumplings carefully, adding the special sauce she'd perfected over years of practice. As she handed them over, their fingers brushed. The touch lasted only a second, but Emma felt it like a brand. Alexander didn't leave after paying. He stood there, eating slowly, watching her work with an intensity that made her self-conscious. "You're very good at this," he observed. "Thank you." "No, I mean," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "There's precision in what you do. Attention to detail. Most people who end up at street stalls are just trying to survive. You're creating something." Emma's hands stilled. She wasn't sure if she should feel flattered or insulted. "And that surprises you?" "Yes," he admitted with surprising honesty. "Most people I meet are predictable. You're not." Before Emma could respond, an elderly woman from the neighboring stall leaned over. Mrs. Chun had been selling vegetables at the market for 40 years and knew everyone's business. "Be careful with that one, dear," Mrs. Chun said in her raspy voice, loud enough for Alexander to hear. "I recognize him from the news. Alexander Sterling. That man is dangerous." Alexander's expression didn't change, but Emma saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition of a truth he couldn't deny. "I should go," he said abruptly. Then, almost as an afterthought, he pulled a business card from his pocket and placed it on the counter. "If you ever want to expand your business, or just talk, you can reach me here." Emma stared at the card. Heavy stock, embossed letters, the kind of card that cost more than she made in a week. "Why?" "Because I'd like to see you again." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. "And because something tells me there's more to your story than dumplings at a market stall." He left before she could form a response. Mrs. Chun sked disapprovingly. "That man destroyed 500 jobs last year. Closed an entire factory to increase his profit margins. Whatever interest he's showing, child, it's not kindness." Emma picked up the business card, turning it over in her fingers. Her reflection stared back at her from the glossy surface. "Don't worry, Mrs. Chun," she said softly. "I know exactly who he is." What Mrs. Chun didn't know, what Alexander Sterling didn't know, was that Emma had known who he was from the moment she'd set up her stall in this particular market, on this particular corner, at this particular time. She'd studied his routines for months, knew his route to the office, knew when traffic would force his car through the market district. She'd engineered their first meeting, and now he was coming back on his own. Emma looked at the wall where her father's photograph hung, a small frame she'd hidden among the menu boards, invisible to customers but always in her line of sight. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, "for what I'm about to do." But the truth was, she wasn't sorry. Not really. She was just getting started. The Sterling Foundation Charity Gala was everything Emma had expected and more. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across a ballroom that could have housed her entire apartment building. Women dripped with diamonds. Men wore watches that cost more than cars, and the champagne flowed like water. Emma stood at the entrance in a borrowed evening gown, dark blue silk that her college roommate had insisted she take, feeling like an imposter. Her hands, usually confident when folding dumplings, trembled as she clutched a small purse. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "You've come too far to turn back now." The invitation had been surprisingly easy to acquire. A few well-placed inquiries, a small bribe to a catering company employee, and suddenly Emma Hartley was on the guest list as a prospective donor. Nobody questioned the legitimacy. In a room full of people pretending to care about charity for tax write-offs, one more fake philanthropist barely registered. The ballroom was massive, easily holding 300 guests. Emma accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and tried to blend in, scanning the crowd for Alexander. She spotted him near the center of the room, and her breath caught. He looked different in a tuxedo, powerful, commanding, every inch the billionaire CEO. But what made her pause was the woman at his side. Tall, blonde, stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than Emma's annual income. She had her hand possessively on Alexander's arm, laughing at something he'd said. Emma felt an unexpected stab of something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. She crushed the feeling immediately. She had no right to feel that way. No reason to care who Alexander Sterling spent his time with. "Excuse me, are you lost?" Emma turned to find the blonde woman standing beside her, having apparently left Alexander's side. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Perfect makeup, cold eyes that assessed Emma like a threat. "I'm sorry," Emma said. "You just seem a bit out of place." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I don't recognize you from the usual charity circuit. Are you someone's assistant?" The insult was clear, but Emma had spent 2 years serving food to people who looked through her like she was invisible. She developed thick skin. "I'm a prospective donor," Emma said calmly, "though I'm beginning to question whether this is the right cause to support." The woman's smile sharpened. "I'm Victoria Lang, Alexander's fiancée." Fiancée. The word hit Emma like a physical blow, though she kept her expression neutral. "Congratulations." "Former fiancé," a new voice corrected. Emma turned to find Alexander standing behind her, and the surprise on his face was worth every uncomfortable moment of the evening. "Emma." He looked genuinely shocked. "I didn't expect. You look beautiful." Victoria's expression went from smug to furious in seconds. You two know each other? We've met, Alexander said, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. Though I'm surprised to see you here. A friend insisted I come, Emma said, falling into the character she practiced. She let herself look slightly uncomfortable, out of place. I don't really belong here. Neither do I, Alexander said quietly. Not really. Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. Don't be ridiculous, Alex. This is your event. Your foundation. Your world. She turned to Emma with barely disguised hostility. What exactly do you do, Miss Hartley? Emma supplied, watching for any reaction to her real name. There was none, and I run a small food business. How quaint, Victoria said dismissively. Well, I'm sure you'll find the evening educational, if nothing else. Now, if you'll excuse us, Alex and I have donors to meet. Actually, Alexander interrupted, his eyes still on Emma. I was hoping I could speak with Emma for a moment. Victoria's face went rigid. Alex, it's fine, Victoria. I'll find you later. The dismissal was clear. Victoria shot Emma a look that promised future retribution before stalking away, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. And suddenly, Emma was alone with Alexander Sterling. Dance with me, he said. It wasn't a question, but Emma shook her head anyway. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because your ex-fiancée looks like she wants to murder me, and I'm not sure I can afford the legal fees. Alexander laughed, genuinely laughed, and Emma felt something dangerous unfurl in her chest. This wasn't part of the plan. She wasn't supposed to find him charming. Victoria and I ended things 6 months ago, he explained, leading Emma toward the dance floor despite her protests. She's just having trouble accepting it. I can't imagine why, Emma said dryly. You seem like such a prize. He laughed again, and this time when he took her hand to lead her onto the dance floor, she didn't resist. The orchestra was playing something slow and classical. Alexander's hand settled on her waist, and Emma tried to ignore the heat of his palm through the thin silk of her dress. They moved together, and she was surprised to find he was a good dancer, confident, assured, leading her through the steps with ease. You're full of surprises, Alexander murmured. So are you. I didn't expect the CEO of Sterling Global to know how to waltz. My mother insisted on dance lessons when I was young. One of the few things she did that I'm grateful for. His expression darkened slightly. She wanted me to fit into high society, to be proper. She didn't understand that you can teach manners, but you can't teach belonging. Emma looked up at him, startled by the vulnerability in his voice. What do you mean? I grew up poor, Emma. Not middle-class struggling, truly poor. We lived in a 2-room apartment with 6 other families. My father drank away what little money we had. My mother cleaned houses for people who treated her like she was invisible. His grip on her hand tightened. Everything I have, I built from nothing. But people like Victoria, people who were born into wealth, they can always tell I don't really belong. Emma's carefully constructed hatred wavered. This wasn't the villain she'd imagined. This was a man who'd clawed his way out of poverty, who understood what it meant to be dismissed and overlooked. This was a man who reminded her of her father. And you forgot where you came from. The words came out sharper than she intended. Alexander's steps faltered. He looked at her with sudden intensity. What makes you say that? Just an observation. Emma forced herself to hold his gaze. You made it out. But in your climb to the top, did you ever look back to see who you stepped on along the way? The music swirled around them. Other couples danced past, oblivious to the tension crackling between Emma and Alexander. No, Alexander said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I remember everything. Every person, every choice, every consequence. Something in his tone made Emma's heart clench. There was pain there, buried deep but real. Then why do it? She asked. Because I was afraid. Because I thought survival meant becoming someone who couldn't be hurt anymore. Someone who didn't need anyone. He pulled her closer, and Emma could feel his heartbeat through his shirt. I was wrong. The song ended. The moment shattered. Other dancers applauded politely, moving toward the bars and buffet tables. But Emma and Alexander stood frozen, staring at each other like they were the only 2 people in the world. I need to tell you something, Alexander said. About my past. About the things I've done. His phone buzzed urgently. He pulled it out, and Emma watched his expression shift from vulnerable to guarded in an instant. Emergency at the office, he said curtly. I have to go. He looked at her with something like regret. Can I see you again? Somewhere real. Not here. Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned, intimate, devastating. I don't want to lose this, he said softly. Whatever this is. Then he was gone, cutting through the crowd with purposeful strides, already on his phone barking orders at whoever was on the other end. Emma stood alone on the dance floor, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched her skin. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. She turned to find Victoria standing there, a champagne flute in each hand and murder in her eyes. Walk with me, Victoria said. It wasn't a request. The rooftop restaurant was nothing like the places Emma had imagined Alexander Sterling would choose. No Michelin stars, no pretentious waitstaff, no astronomical prices. Just a small Italian place in a working-class neighborhood, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread drifting from the kitchen. Emma arrived 10 minutes early, her nerves frayed. She'd spent the past 3 days since the gala trying to process what was happening, trying to reconcile the man she'd danced with against the monster she'd built up in her mind. Alexander was already there, waiting at a corner table with a view of the city lights. He stood when she approached, and Emma noticed he wasn't wearing a suit. Just jeans and a gray sweater that made his blue eyes even more striking. You found it, he said, seeming genuinely pleased. Your directions were very specific. Emma sat down, accepting the menu he offered. Though I have to admit, this isn't what I expected. What did you expect? Something with more than $3 signs. Maybe a place where they don't list prices at all because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. Alexander laughed, that genuine sound that Emma was beginning to recognize. I save those places for business dinners where I need to intimidate people. This, he gestured around the modest restaurant. This is where I come when I want to remember. Remember what? What real food tastes like. What it was like before every meal became a negotiation. The waiter came, and they ordered. Emma noticed Alexander asked for the house wine, not something expensive or obscure. He was trying to make her comfortable, she realized, trying to put them on equal footing. It would have been sweet if it wasn't part of her plan. As they waited for their food, Alexander leaned forward. Tell me about your family. Emma's blood turned cold. This was it, the moment she'd been preparing for. She took a slow sip of water, choosing her words carefully. My father, he was a businessman. A good one. He worked hard, built something from nothing. Past tense. Alexander's expression grew concerned. He died 10 years ago. Emma kept her voice steady, controlled. He lost everything. His business failed, creditors came calling, and he couldn't handle the shame of it. It killed him. The lie of omission burned on her tongue. It hadn't been failure that killed Robert Hartley. It had been betrayal. Alexander's face went pale. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, I'm sorry. That must have been devastating. It was. Emma met his eyes, letting him see real pain there. It wasn't hard. The pain was always close to the surface. I was 18. My brother was 12. We lost everything overnight. Our house, our stability, our future. She paused, then delivered the line she'd practiced. The worst part wasn't the poverty. It was knowing that somewhere out there, the people who destroyed him were celebrating their success. Alexander's hand trembled as he reached for his wine glass. The people who destroyed him? Business can be brutal, Emma said, echoing his own words from the gala. Especially when people have no conscience. The words hung in the air between them like an accusation. Alexander's knuckles turned white around his glass. Yes, he said finally, his voice rough. Especially then. Their food arrived, breaking the tension. They ate in silence for a few minutes, but Emma could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on the table. Finally, Alexander set down his fork. I need to tell you something, he said. About who I am. About the things I've done. Emma's heart hammered. This was it. The confession. The moment of truth. I used to be that person, Alexander continued, his eyes distant. The one with no conscience. I clawed my way to the top, by any means necessary. I destroyed competitors. I ruined lives. I justified it all by telling myself it was just business, that it was survival. And now, Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. Now I'm trying to be better. It's probably too late, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I'm trying. He looked at her directly, and the guilt in his eyes was palpable. There was a man, my mentor. His name was Robert Hartley. Emma's breath stopped. He took me in when I was nobody. Taught me everything about business, about strategy, about success. He was like a father to me. Alexander's voice cracked. And I betrayed him. I stole his technology, sabotaged his deals, and destroyed his company to build my own. He lost everything because of me. And then, he couldn't finish the sentence. He killed himself, Emma said, her voice hollow. Alexander's head snapped up. How did you? Because my father did the same thing. Emma interrupted quickly. Different circumstances, maybe, but the same ending. Men who built empires that crumbled, taking them down with it. It was close enough to the truth that Alexander nodded, relieved that she understood without knowing the whole story. I've tried to make amends, he said quietly. I set up the foundation. I fund programs for business rehabilitation. But you can't repay the dead, Emma. You can't, his voice broke. His family disappeared after his death. A daughter and a son. I've searched for them for years. I wanted to help them, to try to make things right, but they vanished. And I think maybe that's what I deserve. To never have the chance to apologize. To live with that guilt forever. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. He was supposed to be unrepentant. Cruel. A monster who deserved everything she was planning to do to him. But he wasn't. He was a broken man, consumed by guilt, desperately trying to atone for sins he couldn't undo. Why are you telling me this? Emma asked. Alexander reached across the table, taking her hand. His palm was warm against her cold fingers. Because I like you, he said simply. Because there's something about you that makes me want to be honest. To be better. And because if we're going to whatever this is, I need you to know the truth about who I am. His phone rang. The ringtone was urgent, insistent. Alexander closed his eyes in frustration. I'm sorry. I have to. Take it, Emma said, pulling her hand away. He answered with a curt, Sterling. Then his expression darkened. When? How bad? A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Emma with genuine regret. There's a crisis with one of our international contracts. I have to go. Of course. Emma forced a smile. Business comes first. No, Alexander said firmly. He stood, came around the table, and cupped her face in his hands. You come first. This, he gestured between them, comes first. I just need a few hours to put out this fire, and then I want to see you again. Tomorrow. The day after. Every day, if you'll let me. Before Emma could respond, he kissed her. It was soft, gentle, full of promise and hope. Emma felt herself melting into it despite every warning bell in her head. When he pulled away, she was breathless. I don't want to lose this, Alexander whispered against her lips. Whatever this is, please don't disappear on me. Then he was gone, leaving money for the bill and disappearing into the night to deal with his empire. Emma sat alone at the table, her fingers touching her lips where his kiss still lingered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Did you do it? Did you get close to him? Emma stared at the message, then at the half-eaten meal, then at the city lights stretching out before her. What was she doing? This was supposed to be simple. Get close to Alexander Sterling. Make him trust her. Destroy him the way he destroyed their father. But nothing about this felt simple anymore. She typed back, yes, it's working. But as she sent the message, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying. Not to Daniel. To herself. Victoria Lang's office occupied the top floor of Lang Industries, a glass and steel monument to old money and newer ambitions. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city like a queen surveying her kingdom, her phone pressed to her ear. Tell me you have something, she said. The private investigator's voice crackled through the speaker. Everything you suspected and more, Miss Lang. Emma Hartley isn't who she appears to be. Victoria's lips curved into a satisfied smile. Go on. Real name is Emma Hartley, 28 years old. She does run that food stall, but that's recent, past 2 years. Before that, she was an MBA student at Wharton. Full scholarship. Top of her class. Dropped out 10 years ago when her father died. And the father? Robert Hartley. Successful entrepreneur 15 years ago. Filed for bankruptcy after his company collapsed. Suicide followed shortly after. Victoria's smile widened. She'd suspected there was more to the humble food vendor who'd caught Alexander's eye. But this was better than she'd imagined. Robert Hartley, she repeated. Why does that name sound familiar? Because Alexander Sterling destroyed him, Ms. Lang. It's all in the file I'm sending over. Sterling was Hartley's protege. He betrayed him, stole his technology, sabotaged his business. It was the foundation of Sterling Global Industries. Victoria laughed, a cold, satisfied sound. So the little food vendor isn't some innocent girl Alex stumbled upon. She's the daughter of the man he killed. It appears so. And based on her movements over the past year, setting up that specific stall, timing her presence to his routines, I'd say this meeting wasn't coincidental. No, Victoria agreed. It was very much planned. The question is, what's her endgame? She hung up and pulled up the files her investigator had sent. Photographs of Emma, documents about her father, timeline of Alexander's betrayal. It was all there, a perfect storm of revenge just waiting to crash down on Alexander Sterling's head. Victoria should tell him immediately. Warn him that the woman he was falling for was the daughter of his greatest sin. That would be the right thing to do. But Victoria Lang hadn't built an empire by doing the right thing. She picked up her phone and made a different call. "Miss Hartley," she said when Emma answered. "I think we need to meet. I have information you'll be very interested in." Meanwhile, across the city, Emma was breaking into Alexander's office. Breaking in was perhaps too strong a term. Alexander had given her his private number after their date, and when she'd texted saying she'd left her bracelet at the restaurant and couldn't afford to replace it, he'd immediately offered to help. One thing led to another, and suddenly Emma had an invitation to his office for lunch and the perfect opportunity to plant a listening device. The office was stunning, minimalist design, floor-to-ceiling windows, everything in shades of gray and black. But what caught Emma's attention was the bookshelf behind his desk. Mixed in with business journals and leadership books were psychology texts, books about guilt, about redemption, about making amends. Emma's hands trembled as she attached the tiny listening device under his desk. She was already committed, already crossing lines she couldn't uncross. What was one more? She was turning to leave when she noticed the drawer slightly open. Inside, she could see a folder marked Personal, Confidential. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to not invade his privacy any more than she already had. But she'd come too far to turn back now. Emma opened the drawer. The folder contained therapy session notes, pages and pages of them, dating back 15 years. Emma's hands shook as she read through them, and with each page, her carefully constructed image of Alexander Sterling crumbled a little more. Patient exhibits severe guilt complex related to business practices in his 20s. Recurring nightmares about Robert Hartley's death. Patient has established anonymous foundation funding suicide prevention programs. When asked why anonymous, Patient states he doesn't deserve public recognition for trying to undo what he broke. Patient continues to visit Hartley's grave monthly. Has done so for 15 years. Believes he deserves to feel guilt. States forgetting would be worse than remembering. Emma's vision blurred with tears. This wasn't the monster she'd imagined. This was a man who'd made terrible mistakes and spent 15 years trying to atone for them. There was more. A bank statement showing monthly transfers to a trust fund called Business Casualties Relief. $2 million, consistently, every month for 10 years. A sticky note attached. In case Hartley's family is ever found. He'd been trying to find her. To help her. Emma heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly shoved everything back into the drawer. She'd just closed it when Alexander walked in, carrying takeout bags and wearing a genuine smile. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "The lunch meeting ran over, but I got us Thai food from that place you mentioned." He stopped, studying her face. "Emma, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Emma forced herself to breathe, to smile, to lie. "I'm fine. Just thinking about my father. Being in an office like this reminds me of visiting him at work when I was little." The lie tasted like ash, but Alexander accepted it. He set down the food and pulled her into a hug. Warm, solid, real. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I know how much you miss him." Emma closed her eyes, letting herself have this moment even as guilt consumed her. She was standing in his office, having just planted a listening device, having just read his most private thoughts, planning his destruction. And he was holding her like she was precious. What had she become? The cafe was elegant, expensive, and chosen deliberately by Victoria to remind Emma of the gulf between their worlds. Emma arrived exactly on time to find Victoria already seated, 2 cups of coffee waiting. "Sit," Victoria said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Emma sat, her spine straight, her expression neutral. You said you had information. I do. Victoria slid a manila envelope across the table. About Alexander Sterling. About your father. About the revenge you're planning. Emma's blood turned to ice. Her fingers were numb as she opened the envelope and saw her own face staring back at her from surveillance photos. Pictures of her setting up her stall. Timelines of Alexander's route. Her real background. The Wharton scholarship, her father's bankruptcy, everything. How long have you known? Emma asked quietly. Long enough. Victoria leaned back, savoring her advantage. You're good. I'll give you that. The Humble Food Vendor Act is convincing. Alexander certainly bought it. But I know what real poverty looks like versus calculated performance. What do you want? The same thing you want. To destroy Alexander Sterling. Victoria's eyes glittered with malice. But where you're thinking emotionally, heartbreak, public humiliation, I'm thinking professionally. His company is about to close a merger with Tecton Industries. It's worth $3 billion and would make Sterling Global unstoppable. And you want to stop it, Emma said. I want to obliterate it. My company has a rival bid. If Sterling's merger fails, mine succeeds. But I need inside information, files, emails, board meeting notes. Things only someone with intimate access could get. Victoria smiled. Things someone like you, who Alexander trusts completely, could easily acquire. Emma stared at the photos spread across the table. And if I refuse? Then I tell Alexander everything. Who you really are. That your entire relationship is a lie designed to hurt him. He'll never forgive you, Emma. You'll lose any chance at your revenge, and I'll make sure you're charged with corporate espionage. Victoria paused. Oh, and there's your brother. Daniel Hartley. Still struggling with anxiety issues, I see. Still dependent on you for everything. It would be a shame if something happened to jeopardize his situation. The threat was clear. Emma's hands clenched into fists under the table. You have 48 hours, Victoria continued. The board meeting is Thursday. I need those files by Wednesday night. She stood, smoothing her designer dress. Choose wisely, Emma, because right now, I'm offering you a partnership. Refuse me, and I become your enemy. Trust me, you don't want that. Victoria left, her heels clicking away with finality. Emma sat alone, staring at the photos, her reflection ghostly in the cafe window. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. Thinking about you. Dinner tonight? I have something important to ask you. Another text, this one from Victoria, with an address. This is where your brother volunteers every Tuesday. Such a dangerous neighborhood. Anything could happen. Emma's phone nearly cracked under the pressure of her grip. She'd started this journey believing revenge would be simple. That Alexander Sterling was a monster who deserved everything coming to him. But the man she'd gotten to know, the one who visited her father's grave for 15 years, who gave away millions trying to help the people he'd hurt, who was so desperate for redemption he couldn't sleep at night. That man complicated everything. And now Victoria was forcing her hand. Emma typed back to Alexander. Dinner sounds perfect. See you at 8. Then she opened her laptop and started planning how to steal the files that would destroy him. Because Victoria was right about one thing. Emma couldn't protect Daniel and refuse. She couldn't let Alexander know the truth and expect mercy. She was trapped in the web she'd spun, and the only way out was through. Alexander's penthouse was nothing like Emma had imagined. She'd expected cold minimalism, a space designed to impress rather than comfort. Instead, she found warmth, exposed brick walls, comfortable furniture, shelves lined with books. It felt lived in, human, real. I don't usually bring people here, Alexander admitted as he led her inside. This is my space. The one place I don't have to perform. Emma's throat tightened. The listening device in her purse suddenly felt like a lead weight. Why bring me here then? Because I trust you. He said it so simply, so honestly, that Emma wanted to scream. Alexander had cooked dinner himself. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but the effort was clear. They ate on his balcony overlooking the city, talking about everything and nothing. Emma found herself laughing at his stories, sharing her own, carefully edited, memories, feeling more relaxed than she had in years. This is what life could have been, she thought, if her father hadn't been destroyed, if she'd finished college, if she'd met Alexander under different circumstances. After dinner, Alexander grew serious. They moved to the living room, and he poured them wine with slightly shaking hands. I need to tell you something, he began. I've been practicing this speech for days, but now that you're here, I can't remember any of it. Alexander, please, let me get this out. He took a deep breath. I told you about Robert Hartley, about what I did to him, but I didn't tell you everything. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. I was 23, Alexander continued, his eyes distant. Ambitious, terrified, desperate to prove I wasn't going to end up like my parents. Broke, bitter, defeated. Robert took me in. He saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself. He was the father I wished I'd had. His voice cracked, and Emma saw tears gathering in his eyes. And I repaid his kindness with betrayal. I convinced myself it was survival, that he would understand, that business was business. But it wasn't business. It was murder. He looked at Emma directly. I killed him, Emma. Maybe not with my hands, but with my choices. And his family, his daughter and son, they lost everything because of me. Why are you telling me this? Emma whispered. Because I'm falling in love with you. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Because I look at you and I see a chance to be someone better, someone worthy of trust. And I can't. I can't let myself love you while hiding who I really am. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking for honesty between us. Complete honesty. No more secrets. No more lies. Emma felt her world tilting. This was it. The moment where she should confess everything. Tell him who she really was. Let the truth burn away the deception between them. But then his phone rang. Alexander closed his eyes in frustration. I'm sorry. I told them not to call unless it was an emergency. Take it, Emma said, grateful for the reprieve. He answered with barely contained irritation. What? Then his expression changed. Anger, confusion, worry. What do you mean the files are corrupted? That's impossible. When? No, don't touch anything. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up and looked at Emma with genuine anguish. I have to go to the office. There's some kind of security breach. Our files for the Tecton merger have been compromised. It's okay, Emma said automatically. Go. No, it's not okay. Alexander cupped her face in his hands. I was in the middle of telling you, of asking you. It can wait, Emma interrupted. Business is important. You're more important. He kissed her then, desperate, passionate, full of everything he'd been trying to say. When he pulled back, both of them were breathless. Stay here, please. I'll be back in a few hours. We'll finish this conversation, and I'll ask you properly what I've been trying to ask all night. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. The password for the computer is on the desk if you want to watch something, he said, already heading for the door. And help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Just, please don't leave. I need to know you'll be here when I get back. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Emma sat in the sudden silence of his apartment, her heart racing, her mind screaming contradictory commands. The computer was right there. The password written on a sticky note, probably the same password for everything. Knowing Alexander's distracted approach to security, she could access everything. The files Victoria wanted, the confidential board meeting notes, all the ammunition she needed to destroy Sterling Global Industries. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Time's running out, Emma. I need those files tonight. Thursday is too late. Another text, this one from Daniel. Emma, Victoria's people are watching me. I'm scared. Please, just give her what she wants. I can't end up like Dad. Please. Emma's hands shook as she read Daniel's text again. Her baby brother, terrified, alone, being threatened because of her revenge plan. She looked at the computer, at the sticky note with the password, at her reflection in the dark screen. This was it, the point of no return. Emma thought about her father, his kind eyes, his gentle hands, his patient way of explaining business concepts when she was just a child sitting on his lap. She thought about finding him in his study, about the funeral where only a handful of people came because everyone else had abandoned him when his company failed. She thought about the years of poverty that followed, of dropping out of Wharton, of working 3 jobs to keep Daniel fed and safe, of the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, consumed by rage at the injustice of it all. Alexander Sterling had taken everything from her, but he was also the man who'd held her gently, who'd confessed his sins with tears in his eyes, who'd spent 15 years trying to atone for mistakes he couldn't undo. He was a man who visited her father's grave every month, a man who'd said he was falling in love with her. Emma opened the computer. The password worked. She navigated through the files with trembling fingers, downloading everything Victoria had asked for onto a USB drive. With each file that transferred, she felt a piece of her soul die. When it was done, she sat staring at the USB drive in her hand. Such a small thing. Such terrible power. Her phone rang. Alexander. "Hey," he said, and she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "I'm so sorry. This is going to take all night. Someone deliberately corrupted our files. It's sabotage. Victoria, maybe. I don't know. It's okay," Emma lied. "It's not. I was going to. I had this whole plan. Dinner, conversation, and then I was going to ask you." He paused. "Emma, move in with me." The world stopped. "What?" she whispered. "I know it's fast. I know we've only been seeing each other for a few weeks. But I've never felt this way before. Like I've finally found something real. Someone who sees me. All of me, including the broken parts, and doesn't run." His voice was rough with emotion. "I don't want to waste time. I've wasted too much of my life already. So I'm asking, move in with me. Let's see where this goes. Let's build something together." Emma's tears fell silently, dripping onto the USB drive in her hand. "Emma, say something. If it's too fast, I understand. We can. I love you too," she said, the truth ripping out of her like a confession. "Yeah." The joy in his voice was devastating. "Yeah. Then when I get home, we'll talk about it properly. Figure out the logistics. Make plans." He laughed, the sound lighter than she'd ever heard from him. "God, Emma, you make me believe in second chances, in redemption, in the possibility that I might actually deserve happiness." After they hung up, Emma sat in the silence of his apartment that he'd just asked her to make theirs, and sobbed. The USB drive sat on the coffee table, glinting in the city lights. She picked up her phone and texted Victoria, "I have what you need." Then she texted Daniel, "It's going to be okay. I'm taking care of it." Finally, she looked at the last text on her phone, from Alexander. "Can't wait to come home to you." Emma picked up the USB drive and stood. She had a choice to make. Destroy the man she loved to save her brother and avenge her father. Or find another way, even if it meant risking everything. She walked to Alexander's desk and opened the drawer where she'd seen the therapy notes. But this time, she went deeper, pulling out old files, reading through documents she had no right to see. And that's when she found it. A letter, unsealed, addressed to Emma and Daniel Hartley, if they're ever found. Emma's hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Emma and Daniel, you don't know me, but I knew your father. He was my mentor, my friend, and I destroyed him. There are no words to express my remorse, no actions that can undo what I did. By the time you read this, you'll know the full story of my betrayal. I've spent 15 years trying to find you, to offer what meaningless help I can give, money, support, an apology that's 15 years too late. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that your father was a good man, the best man I've ever known, and his destruction was my doing, not his failing. If the world made sense, I would be the one who disappeared, and he would still be building things, creating value, raising his children. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, terribly sorry. If you're reading this, please know that anything I have is yours. My company, my money, my life, all of it was built on the foundation of your father's work. It belongs to you. I hope you found happiness despite everything I took from you. I hope you're living lives your father would be proud of. And I hope, somewhere, somehow, he knows I never stopped regretting what I did. Alexander Sterling. The letter was dated 14 years ago, updated annually, each version saying essentially the same thing. Emma clutched the letter to her chest and finally understood the full weight of what she was doing. Alexander Sterling wasn't a villain who needed to be destroyed. He was a broken man who'd been punishing himself for 15 years, desperately seeking forgiveness from people he couldn't find. And she, his victim's daughter, the one person who could either grant or deny him redemption, had fallen in love with him. The universe had the cruelest sense of irony. Emma looked at the USB drive, at the letter, at her reflection in the window. Tomorrow was the board meeting. Victoria expected the files. Daniel needed her protection. Alexander deserved the truth. And Emma had to decide who she was going to be. Her father's daughter, seeking revenge, or someone who could break the cycle of pain. She picked up her phone and started typing a message that would change everything. Emma didn't go home that night. Instead, she found herself at Riverside Cemetery, standing before a simple headstone that read, Robert Hartley, beloved father, gone too soon. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The cemetery was empty except for her and the ghosts of the past. "I don't know what to do, Dad," Emma whispered to the stone. "I thought I knew. I thought revenge would heal us. But it won't, will it? It'll just make everything worse." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh flowers. Emma knelt down, and that's when she noticed them. Roses. Fresh, expensive, placed carefully by the headstone. They hadn't been there when she'd visited last week. Her hands shook as she picked up the small card tucked among the stems. "I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. Alexander had been here recently. Maybe yesterday. Maybe this morning before going to the office." Emma heard footsteps on the gravel path and looked up to see the last person she expected, Alexander Sterling himself, carrying another bouquet of roses. He froze when he saw her. The flowers dropped from his hands. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across Robert Hartley's grave. "Emma," Alexander said finally, his voice hollow with realization. "Your father. His name was Robert Hartley," Emma finished. "My name is Emma Hartley, and you destroyed him." The words hung in the dawn air like an execution sentence. Alexander stumbled backward, his face draining of color. "No. God, no. Please tell me. Please tell me this is some kind of—" "It's not." Emma stood, and she was surprised by how calm her voice sounded. How empty she felt. "I'm the daughter you've been searching for. The one who disappeared. The one you wanted to help. How long?" Alexander's voice was barely audible. "How long have you known who I was?" "From the beginning. Every moment. Every conversation. Every kiss." Emma watched his face crumple with the weight of her words. "I set up that food stall because I knew your route. I engineered our meeting. I've been planning this for 2 years." Alexander sat down hard on a nearby bench, as if his legs could no longer support him. "The revenge plot," he whispered. "Of course. You were going to destroy me." "Yes. I deserve it." "Yes," Emma agreed. Then, softer, "But it won't bring him back." She moved to sit beside him, both of them staring at her father's grave. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on her. Two people who should hate each other, sitting together in a cemetery, mourning the same man. "I've come here every month for 15 years, Alexander said. Talking to him, apologizing, asking for forgiveness I'll never receive. He looked at Emma with devastated eyes. "And all this time, his daughter, you, were out there suffering because of what I did. While I was falling in love with you, you were planning my destruction." "I was," Emma admitted. But then what? You decided I wasn't so bad after all." Alexander laughed bitterly. "Emma, I killed your father. There is no but then. There's just truth. And the truth is I took everything from you. And you have every right to hate me." "I wanted to," Emma said. "I spent 10 years hating you, building you up in my mind as this monster who deserved everything I was planning. And then I got to know you." She wiped away tears with the back of her hand. "You're not a monster, Alexander. You're just a person who made terrible choices and has been trying to make up for them ever since. That doesn't absolve me." "No, it doesn't." They sat in silence, watching the sunrise paint colors across the sky. Emma thought about the USB drive in her purse, about Victoria's threats, about Daniel's fear, about the choice she'd been agonizing over all night. "I have files," Emma said finally. "Confidential information about your merger. Victoria Lang blackmailed me into getting them. She threatened my brother. She said if I didn't help her destroy you, she'd expose me and hurt Daniel." Alexander's expression didn't change. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I'm done with lies." Emma pulled out the USB drive and held it up. "This could ruin you. And your company. Give me everything I wanted when I started this." "But—" She looked at her father's grave, at the fresh flowers Alexander had brought, at the man beside her who'd spent 15 years punishing himself. "But revenge won't heal me," Emma finished. "It'll just make me into someone my father wouldn't recognize. Someone he wouldn't want me to be." She stood and walked to a nearby trash can. For a long moment, she stood there, the USB drive in her hand, wrestling with years of pain and anger and loss. Then she threw it away. "What are you doing?" Alexander was on his feet, confused. "Choosing." Emma turned back to him, tears streaming down her face. "My father's last words to me were, 'Don't let bitterness poison you.' I didn't understand what he meant. But I do now. Destroying you won't bring him back. It won't heal Daniel. It'll just perpetuate the cycle of pain." Alexander stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. So what happens now? Now. Emma took a shaky breath. Now I think you need to protect yourself. Victoria knows who I am. She'll try to use it against you. I don't care about Victoria. You should. She's planning something for the board meeting tomorrow. She has dirt on me, on you, on everything. And she won't hesitate to use it. Alexander moved closer, careful, like she might bolt at any moment. Emma, I need to know. These past weeks, was any of it real? Or was it all part of your plan? Emma thought about the question, about the careful lies she'd constructed and the unexpected truths that had emerged despite them, about falling in love with the last person she should have loved. It started as a lie, she admitted. But somewhere along the way, it became the most honest thing in my life. She looked up at him, letting him see everything, the pain, the confusion, the love she'd tried so hard to deny. I hate that I love you, Alexander. I hate that you make me want to forgive you. I hate that when I look at you, I see the man you're trying to become instead of the monster who destroyed my family. But you do love me, he said quietly. Yes. God help me, yes. They stood there in the cemetery, in the growing daylight, with her father's grave between them like a physical representation of everything that separated them. I don't expect forgiveness, Alexander said finally. I don't expect you to trust me or love me or give me a second chance. But Emma, I need you to know that everything I said to you was real. The feelings, the confessions, the future I wanted with you. All of it was real. I know. And I need you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for what I did to your father. Not to win you back. Not to earn redemption. But because it's the right thing to do. Emma nodded, fresh tears falling. What do we do now? Now, Alexander said. We face Victoria together. And then you decide if there's any possible future for us, or if some sins are too great to forgive. He held out his hand, not demanding, just offering. Emma looked at her father's grave one more time. In her mind, she heard his voice from all those years ago. Everyone deserves a second chance, Emma. Even people who don't think they deserve it. She took Alexander's hand. The Sterling Global Industries boardroom was impressive, all dark wood and leather, with a view of the city that reminded everyone present of the empire they were protecting. 15 board members sat around the massive table, suits immaculate, expressions carefully neutral. Alexander stood at the head of the table, presenting the Tecton merger with his usual confidence. But Emma, watching from the corner where she'd been invited to observe, could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands. Victoria Lang sat 3 seats down, looking like a cat who'd caught a canary. Every few minutes, her eyes would flick to Emma, checking, calculating, waiting. Emma's phone buzzed silently. A text from Victoria. Last chance. Give me the files, or I burn your world down. Your choice. Emma's finger hovered over the screen. She thought about Daniel, alone and scared. About Alexander, vulnerable and exposed. About the power she held to save one while destroying the other. She typed back, do what you have to do. Victoria's eyes widened slightly when she read the message. Then they narrowed with fury. If I may interrupt, Victoria said, her voice cutting through Alexander's presentation. I think the board deserves to know some additional context before making a decision of this magnitude. Alexander's jaw tightened. Victoria, unless you have information directly related to the Tecton merger. Oh, I do. Victoria stood, pulling out a folder that Emma recognized. Her file, the one with all her secrets. It relates to corporate security, specifically to who has had access to our confidential information. Emma's heart hammered, but she didn't look away. This was it. Over the past month, Victoria continued, Alexander has been in a relationship with a woman named Emma Hartley. Sweet story, really. Billionaire falls for humble food vendor. Very pretty woman. She smiled coldly. Except Emma Hartley isn't who she appears to be. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Alexander remained still, his face impassive. Emma Hartley is the daughter of Robert Hartley, Victoria announced, and the reaction was immediate. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping as people leaned forward. The same Robert Hartley that Alexander destroyed 15 years ago. The same Robert Hartley whose suicide was directly caused by Alexander's corporate sabotage. That's enough, Alexander said quietly. No, I don't think it is. Victoria was enjoying this, Emma realized. Enjoying the power, the drama, the destruction. Because here's where it gets interesting. Emma Hartley didn't just happen to run into Alexander at a street market. She engineered their meeting. She's been planning revenge for 2 years, carefully insinuating herself into his life. Emma stood. Every eye in the room turned to her. "It's true," she said clearly. "Everything Victoria just said is true. My name is Emma Hartley. Robert Hartley was my father. And yes, I blamed Alexander Sterling for his death." The room erupted in conversation. One board member demanded Emma be removed. Another started talking about security breaches. A third was already on his phone, probably calling legal. "I planned revenge," Emma continued, her voice rising above the chaos. "I set up my food stall knowing Alexander's route. I made sure we'd meet. I've been lying about who I am from the beginning." Victoria's smile was triumphant. "But," Emma said, and something in her tone made everyone quiet down, "I'm not here for revenge anymore." She walked to the center of the room, pulling out her phone. "Victoria isn't telling you everything. She's not exposing me out of concern for Sterling Global. She's doing it because she wanted me to steal confidential files about the Tecton merger." Victoria's face went pale. "She blackmailed me," Emma continued, displaying the text messages on the screen. "She threatened my brother. She demanded I access Alexander's computer and steal proprietary information that would allow her company to sabotage this merger and secure a competing bid." She forwarded the text to the screen at the front of the room. Every board member could now see Victoria's threats in high definition. "I refused," Emma said simply. "I could have destroyed Alexander Sterling. I could have gotten everything I came here for. But I learned something over these past weeks. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just creates new ones." She turned to look directly at Alexander. "I came here to destroy you. Instead, I learned who you really are. A man who made terrible mistakes. A man who spent 15 years trying to atone for them. A man who visits my father's grave every month. Who set up foundations to help people like my family. Who can't sleep at night because the guilt won't let him rest." Her voice cracked. "You're not the monster I wanted you to be. You're just human and flawed and trying your best to be better." The room was dead silent. "So yes," Emma continued, "our relationship started as a lie, but it became something real. And I'm here today not to destroy Alexander Sterling, but to tell the truth. All of it." She pulled out a recording device, another surprise. Victoria's eyes widened with panic. "This is Victoria Lang blackmailing me, threatening my brother, and detailing her plan to use me to sabotage Sterling Global." Emma pressed play, and Victoria's voice filled the boardroom, cold and calculating, outlining her entire scheme. When it finished, Emma looked at the board members one by one. "I'm guilty of deception, of planning revenge, of lying about who I am. But Victoria is guilty of corporate espionage, blackmail, and conspiracy to sabotage a $3 billion merger." Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. "This is ridiculous. You have no proof." "I have recordings," Emma interrupted. "I have texts. I have documentation of every threat you made, every demand you placed, every illegal action you proposed." She looked at Alexander. "I may have come here to destroy Sterling Global, but I won't let her do it with lies and blackmail." Security was already moving toward Victoria. She looked around wildly, her perfect composure cracking. "You stupid girl. You could have had everything. We could have destroyed him together." "I don't want to destroy anyone anymore," Emma said quietly. "I just want the truth." As security escorted Victoria from the boardroom, Emma finally allowed herself to look at Alexander properly. His expression was unreadable, shock, maybe, or disbelief. She couldn't tell if he was grateful or furious. "The board should also know," Emma continued, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes, "that Alexander Sterling has been trying to find my brother and me for 15 years. He set up trust funds for us. He's anonymously funded programs to help families destroyed by corporate bankruptcies. He's visited my father's grave monthly for longer than I've been planning revenge." She pulled out the letter she'd found, the one addressed to her and Daniel. "He wrote this 14 years ago. He's been trying to make amends for longer than I've been angry." Emma set the letter on the table and looked at Alexander one more time. "I don't know if what we had was real or just a beautiful lie, but I know you're not the villain I wanted you to be. And I know I can't keep living in the past." She turned toward the door. "Emma," Alexander's voice stopped her. "Where are you going?" "Away. To figure out who I am when I'm not consumed by anger." She smiled sadly. "You have a merger to complete. a company to run, a redemption to continue earning. And us? The question hung in the air. Emma could feel every board member watching, waiting for her answer. I don't know if there can be in U.S., Emma said honestly. Maybe some wounds are too deep. Maybe some sins are unforgivable. Or maybe, her voice broke. Maybe forgiveness is the only thing that can set either of us free. She left before anyone could respond, walking out of Sterling Global Industries with her head high and her heart shattered. Behind her, she could hear the board erupting in conversation. But she didn't look back. Emma Hartley had spent 2 years planning revenge and the last month falling in love with the wrong person. Now she had to figure out who she was when she wasn't defined by either. It was terrifying. It was necessary. It was finally honest. 2 weeks passed. Emma didn't hear from Alexander. She told herself it was for the best, that they both needed space to process everything that had happened. But that didn't stop her from checking her phone obsessively, hoping for a text that never came. The news, meanwhile, was having a field day. Sterling Global CEO's secret girlfriend, actually daughter of man he destroyed. Revenge plot turns to romance. The most complicated love story of the year. Victoria Lang facing multiple charges after corporate espionage scandal. Emma stopped reading after the first few articles. She focused instead on what mattered, Daniel. Her brother was finally getting the therapy he needed, funded by the trust Alexander had set up years ago. It turned out the Business Casualties Relief Fund had been waiting for them all along. $2 million, untouched, gathering interest for over a decade. He really was trying to find us, Daniel said one evening as they sat in Emma's apartment. All this time, he was looking. I know. Do you hate him less now? Emma thought about the question. I don't think I ever really hated him. I hated the idea of him. The villain I'd built up in my mind. The real Alexander, she paused. He's more complicated than that. Do you love him? Yes. The admission hurt less than she expected. God help me, yes. Then why are you here instead of with him? Because love doesn't fix everything, Daniel. Love doesn't undo the past. It doesn't bring Dad back. It doesn't erase 15 years of pain. No, Daniel agreed. But maybe it's a start. Maybe it's how we begin to heal instead of just surviving. Emma looked at her younger brother, 22 years old now, but still carrying the trauma of finding their father's suicide note at 12. Yet here he was, in therapy, working through his pain instead of letting it consume him. When had he become the wise one? What would Dad want? Emma asked quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. He'd want you to be happy. He'd want both of us to stop carrying his death like a burden. He'd want, his voice cracked, he'd want us to forgive Em. Not for Alexander's sake. For ours. Emma's phone buzzed. Not a text this time, a news alert. Alexander Sterling steps down as CEO of Sterling Global Industries. Her heart stopped. She clicked on the article with trembling fingers. In a shocking move today, Alexander Sterling announced his resignation as CEO of Sterling Global Industries, effective immediately. Sterling, who founded the company 15 years ago, cited personal reasons for his departure. I've spent my career building an empire, Sterling said in a brief statement. But I built it on a foundation of betrayal and hurt. It's time I stopped running from that truth and started facing it properly. I'm stepping down to work on becoming the person I should have been all along. When asked about his plans, Sterling mentioned focusing on the Business Casualties Relief Foundation and personally working to help entrepreneurs recover from bankruptcy. Sources close to Sterling say this decision follows the recent scandal involving Emma Hartley, daughter of Robert Hartley, whom Sterling allegedly betrayed 15 years ago. Emma read the article 3 times, her hands shaking. He'd given up everything. His company, his position, his identity as the brilliant CEO who'd built an empire from nothing. For what? Redemption? Penance? Or was it something else? Emma, Daniel said gently. What are you going to do? She looked at her brother, at their small apartment that still felt like poverty despite the trust fund they now had access to, at the life she'd built around anger and survival. I don't know, she admitted. But that was a lie. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She just didn't know if she was brave enough to do it. Emma returned to her market stall 4 days after the news broke. She'd taken time off after the board meeting, unable to face the familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and folding dumplings. But her savings were running low, and despite the trust fund, she wasn't ready to touch Alexander's money yet. Maybe she never would be. The market was busy with the dinner rush, families grabbing takeout, students looking for cheap meals, the usual chaos of the evening crowd. Emma fell into the familiar routine, letting muscle memory take over while her mind wandered. She didn't see him at first. It was the sudden quiet that made her look up. Conversations had stopped. People were staring, whispering, pointing. Alexander Sterling stood at her stall, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, holding a single white rose. He looked different, tired, older, but there was something lighter in his expression, like a weight had been removed. "Hi," he said simply. Emma's hands stilled over the dumplings she'd been preparing. "Hi. I didn't know if you'd still be here. Where else would I be? Using the trust fund. Starting over somewhere new. Getting as far away from me as possible." Emma set down her knife carefully. "What are you doing here, Alexander?" "I'm not the CEO anymore," he said, as if that explained everything. "I stepped down, handed the company over to the board. I kept a minority stake, enough to ensure the business casualties fund stays active, but everything else? I'm done." "I heard. Did you also hear that I've been volunteering at business rehabilitation centers? Helping people rebuild after bankruptcy?" He smiled sadly. "Turns out I'm actually pretty good at it. All those years of building companies. I can teach people how to do it without destroying others in the process." "That's good," Emma said carefully. "I'm glad you're finding purpose." "Emma," he stepped closer, and she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did to your father can never be undone. But I need you to know that I'm not asking for another chance because I want to absolve my guilt or feel better about myself." "Then why are you asking?" "Because I love you. Because you showed me what it means to choose healing over hurt. Because when I'm with you, I'm not the man who destroyed Robert Hartley or the CEO who sacrificed everything for success. I'm just," he paused, searching for words, "I'm just me. And I like who I am when I'm with you." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. "You hurt my family. You destroyed my father. I know. I can't just forget that. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking if you can forgive. Not for me, for you." Alexander set the white rose on the counter between them. "Your brother told me something when I went to see him last week." Emma's head snapped up. "You went to see Daniel?" "He called me. Said he wanted to talk." Alexander smiled slightly. "He's a good kid. Strong. Smart. He said your father used to tell you both that everyone deserves a second chance. That holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." "He said that to you?" "He said his sister taught him that. That by choosing not to destroy me, you showed him what real strength looks like." Alexander's voice was rough with emotion. "He told me to fight for you. To not give up just because I don't deserve you." "You don't deserve me," Emma said, but there was no heat in it. "I know. But maybe," he reached across the counter, his hand hovering near hers, not quite touching. "Maybe deserving isn't the point. Maybe the point is choosing each other anyway. Choosing to build something new from the ruins of what was destroyed." Emma looked at his hand, so close to hers. She thought about her father, about the last 10 years of anger and pain, about the revenge she'd planned and the love she'd found instead. She thought about who she wanted to be. Her father's daughter? Yes, always. But also her own person. Someone who could choose forgiveness without forgetting. Someone who could acknowledge pain without being consumed by it. "I can't promise it'll be easy," Emma said quietly. "I don't want easy. I want real. I can't promise I won't have days where I look at you and see what you took from me. I know. I'll be patient. I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't promise we'll work out. That love will be enough to bridge everything between us. Then we'll fail together," Alexander said simply. "But at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have chosen healing over hate." Emma's fingers moved toward his, and when they touched, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not closure, it was too soon for that. Not forgiveness, exactly, that would take time. But possibility. The possibility that two people broken by the same tragedy could somehow help each other heal. "I have conditions," Emma said. "Anything. We visit my father's grave together. Not to apologize, you've done that enough. But to remember him. To keep his memory alive in a way that honors who he was, not just how he died. Yes. You continue your work helping people rebuild their businesses. You turn your guilt into something productive, something that actually makes the world better. Already doing that. And," Emma took a deep breath, "we're honest. Completely honest. No more secrets. No more lies. If this is going to work, it has to be built on truth, even when the truth is ugly. Alexander nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I can do that. What else? You help me finish my MBA. The one I dropped out of when Dad died. I want to complete what I started. And maybe, she smiled slightly, maybe I'll work with you, helping other families who've been destroyed by people like you used to be, turning your past sins into our shared redemption. I would be honored. They stood there in the middle of the busy market, hands touching across a food stall counter, while the world moved around them. This doesn't mean I forgive you, Emma said softly. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. I know, but it means I'm willing to try, to see if we can build something real from all this pain. That's all I'm asking for. A chance. Emma picked up the white rose he'd brought, twirling it between her fingers. What does white mean? New beginnings. Fresh starts. The possibility of something pure growing from impure soil. Poetic for a businessman. I've been reading a lot lately. Turns out when you're not running a company, you have time for things like books, and therapy, and figuring out who you want to be. And who do you want to be? Alexander looked at her with complete honesty. Better than I was. Not because I'm trying to earn redemption, or because I think I can ever make up for what I did, but because you deserve someone who's trying to be worthy of the chance you're giving him. Emma set down the rose and reached across the counter, cupping his face in her hands. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm terrified that I'm making a mistake, that I'm betraying my father's memory, that love isn't enough to fix what's broken between us. I'm scared too, Alexander said. But I think your father would understand. Daniel said he was the kind of man who believed in second chances. He believed everyone deserves the chance to be better than their worst moment. Emma's thumb traced along Alexander's jawline. I'm choosing to believe that too. Not because you've earned it, but because I want to be the kind of person who can offer grace, even when it's hard. Thank you, Alexander whispered. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be messy and complicated and probably painful. Most things worth having are. Emma pulled him closer and kissed him, not with passion, but with promise. The promise that they would try, that they would be honest, that they would build something real from the ruins of tragedy. When they pulled apart, the market crowd that had been watching erupted in applause. Emma laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. Well, she said, I guess we have witnesses now. No backing out. Wouldn't dream of it. Alexander ordered dumplings, the same ones that had started everything, and sat at her stall while she finished the dinner rush. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Sometimes presence was enough. As the market began to close and Emma cleaned her station, Alexander helped her pack up. It was domestic, simple, real. Where do we go from here? Emma asked as they walked through the emptying market together. Forward, Alexander said simply. One day at a time. Together. Emma looked up at the night sky, at the stars barely visible through the city lights, and thought about her father, about whether he would approve of this choice. She liked to think he would. Robert Hartley had been a man who believed in redemption, in second chances, in the power of forgiveness to heal rather than destroy. Emma was choosing to be his daughter in that way, not in anger, but in grace. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe it would be worth it. The Morrison Memorial Foundation opened on a crisp Saturday morning in October, exactly 15 years after Robert Hartley's death. The building was beautiful, modern glass and steel on the outside, but warm and welcoming on the inside. Every detail had been carefully chosen by Emma and Alexander together, working side by side for the past 6 months to create something meaningful from tragedy. The foundation offered business counseling, mental health support, financial planning, and job retraining for entrepreneurs who'd lost everything. It was funded by Alexander's personal fortune and managed by a board that included Emma, Daniel, and several other families who'd been destroyed by corporate betrayals. Your father would have loved this, Mrs. Chen said, squeezing Emma's hand. The elderly vendor from the market had come to the opening, along with dozens of others whose lives had been touched by the foundation's work. I hope so, Emma said softly. She stood in the main hall, looking up at the wall of portraits, families who'd been helped, businesses that had been rebuilt, lives that had been changed. And at the center, in a place of honor, was a photograph of Robert Hartley. Not the broken man who'd died. The vibrant entrepreneur who'd built things and believed in people and taught his daughter that everyone deserves a second chance. Emma. Alexander's voice was quiet behind her. They're ready to start the ceremony. She turned to find him dressed simply in a dark suit, his hair slightly longer than it had been when he was CEO. The past 6 months had been good to him. Or maybe it was just that he was finally at peace. They'd taken things slowly. There had been difficult conversations, therapy sessions together and apart, days where Emma couldn't look at him without seeing her father's death. But there had also been laughter, shared dreams, quiet moments of connection that felt like healing. "How are you feeling?" Alexander asked, searching her face. "Proud, sad, hopeful." Emma smiled. "All of it at once." Daniel approached, looking healthy and confident in a way he hadn't in years. Therapy and the foundation work had been good for him too. He'd gone back to college, was studying business like their father, and had started dating a girl who made him laugh. "You ready?" Daniel asked his sister. "As I'll ever be." They moved toward the podium together, Emma, Alexander, and Daniel. A family rebuilt from broken pieces. Emma spoke first, her voice steady and clear. 15 years ago, my father died. For a long time, I let that death define me. I let anger and pain consume everything I was and everything I could be. I planned revenge against the man who destroyed him, convinced that justice meant destruction. She looked at Alexander, who stood beside her with quiet dignity. But I learned something. Revenge doesn't heal. It just creates more pain, more victims, more tragedy. Emma turned back to the crowd. This foundation isn't about revenge. It's about redemption. About taking the worst moments of our lives and transforming them into something that helps others. About breaking the cycle of destruction and choosing to build instead. Alexander stepped forward. "I destroyed Robert Hartley. There's no sugarcoating that truth. No way to make it palatable or acceptable. I was young, ambitious, and willing to sacrifice someone who trusted me to get ahead. I've spent 15 years trying to make amends, but nothing I do will bring him back or erase the pain I caused his family." His voice was rough with emotion. But Emma and Daniel Hartley have shown me that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning from it. It's about becoming someone who helps rather than hurts. And it's about accepting that some wounds never fully heal. They just become part of who we are. He looked at Emma, and the love in his eyes was clear. "This foundation is my apology. Not because an apology is enough, but because action matters more than words. Every family we help is a small step toward becoming the person I should have been all along." Daniel spoke last, his voice young but strong. "My father used to say that everyone deserves a second chance. I didn't understand that when I was 12. I just knew my dad was gone and someone had to pay. But Emma taught me," his voice cracked. "She taught me that holding on to hate doesn't honor the people we've lost. It just makes us smaller, meaner, less than who we could be." He smiled at his sister. "My dad would be proud of what Emma has built here. Not just this foundation, but the person she's become. Someone who can face the man who destroyed our family and choose forgiveness over vengeance. That takes more strength than revenge ever could." The crowd erupted in applause. Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at the memorial wall, at her father's photograph smiling down at them. After the ceremony, people mingled, sharing stories and hope. Emma found herself standing alone in front of her father's portrait when Alexander joined her. "I talked to a woman today," he said quietly. "Her husband's business was destroyed by corporate sabotage. She came here to get help rebuilding. When she learned who I was, she spit at my feet." Emma looked at him, startled. "What did you do?" "I apologized. I told her she had every right to her anger. And then I introduced her to the counselors who will help her family recover." He smiled sadly. "Not everyone will forgive me, Emma. Most won't. And that's okay. I don't do this work for forgiveness." "Then why do you do it?" "Because it's right. Because these people deserve help regardless of how they feel about me. And because," he took her hand, "because you taught me that healing isn't about being forgiven. It's about choosing to be better every single day, whether anyone acknowledges it or not." Emma squeezed his hand. Over the past 6 months, they'd rebuilt their relationship on honesty and effort. Some days were harder than others. Some days Emma looked at him and still saw the man who destroyed her father. But more and more, she saw the man who visited her father's grave every month, who worked tirelessly to help families like hers, who was genuinely trying to be better. "I love you," Emma said. It was the first time she'd said it freely, without reservation or conditions. Alexander's breath caught. Yeah. Not because you've earned it, or because you deserve it, but because love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I choose you. I choose us. I choose to believe that two broken people can help each other heal. He pulled her into his arms, and for a long moment, they just held each other in front of her father's portrait. Thank you, Alexander whispered into her hair. For what? For giving me a second chance. For showing me what real strength looks like. For teaching me that redemption is possible, even for someone like me. Emma pulled back to look at him. We're still a work in progress, you know. This doesn't mean everything is fixed. I know, but it's a start. A good start, Emma agreed. They stood together in the foundation that bore her father's name, surrounded by the families they were helping, and for the first time in 10 years, Emma felt something other than anger or pain. She felt hope. 1 year later, Emma's new restaurant opened in the same neighborhood where she'd once run a street stall. Morrison's Kitchen was elegant but accessible, the kind of place where families could afford to eat, but the food was exceptional. Every dish was crafted with the same care Emma had learned selling dumplings from a market stall, elevated by the culinary training she'd completed during her return to business school. The opening night was busy, packed with friends, family, and foundation supporters. But Emma noticed one regular customer who'd been there every day during the soft opening week. Alexander, sitting alone at a corner table, reading and eating her food with obvious pleasure. He didn't own the restaurant, didn't invest in it, didn't have any stake in it beyond being a loyal customer. Emma had built this with her own money from the trust fund her father had left and her own hard work. It was hers, truly hers. You know you don't have to come here every night, Emma said, sliding into the seat across from him. Alexander looked up from his book and smiled. I know, but your food is the best in the city. Why would I eat anywhere else? Bias has nothing to do with it, I'm sure. Actually, Mrs. Chin comes here 3 times a week, and she's brutally honest. If the food was bad, she'd tell you. Emma laughed. It came easier now, the laughter. The past year had been transformative, finishing her MBA, opening the restaurant, working with the foundation, and slowly, carefully building a life with Alexander that was based on honesty rather than deception. They didn't live together yet. Emma wasn't ready for that level of commitment. But they saw each other almost every day, worked together at the foundation, visited her father's grave together monthly. It was enough. For now, it was enough. What are you reading? Emma asked, nodding at his book. Poetry, actually. Mary Oliver. There's a line I keep thinking about. He found the page and read aloud. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And what's your answer? Alexander closed the book, looking at her with the complete honesty that had become the foundation of their relationship. I plan to spend it trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave me. And failing that, at least spending it with you. Emma reached across the table and took his hand. That's a pretty good plan. Yeah. A waiter approached, Daniel, who'd decided to work at his sister's restaurant while finishing college. He set down 2 plates with Emma's signature dish, dumplings, the same recipe she perfected at her market stall, elevated with better ingredients and beautiful presentation. On the house, Daniel said, winking at his sister. Can't have my best customer and my pain-in-the-ass sister going hungry. After he left, Emma and Alexander ate in comfortable silence. The restaurant buzzed with life around them, families celebrating, couples on dates, friends sharing meals. It was everything Emma had dreamed of when she dropped out of Wharton 10 years ago, mourning her father and planning revenge. She'd taken the long road to get here, the painful road, but maybe that was the only way it could have happened. I was thinking, Alexander said, setting down his fork, about what comes next. Next? For us. He looked nervous, which was endearing on a man who used to command billion-dollar companies. I know we're taking things slow. I know you need time. But Emma, I want a future with you. Not because I'm trying to make up for the past, but because I genuinely can't imagine my life without you in it. Emma's heart raced. Alexander. I'm not proposing, he interrupted quickly. I know we're not ready for that. But I'm saying, I want to get ready for that. I want to build toward that. Slowly. Carefully. Honestly. What does that look like to you? Maybe moving in together. Combining our lives in a real way. Continuing our work at the foundation. Maybe, he smiled. Maybe talking about a future where we're not defined by your father's death, but by what we built from it. Emma thought about the question she'd been avoiding. about whether there could truly be a future with the man who destroyed her father, about whether love was enough to bridge that terrible history. My father used to tell me that holding on to anger was like drinking poison, Emma said slowly. I spent 10 years proving him right. I was so consumed by rage that I couldn't see anything else, couldn't build anything else, couldn't be anything else. And now I'm choosing something different. Not forgetting, I'll never forget what happened, but not letting it define me either. She squeezed his hand. I'm choosing to believe that people can change, that mistakes, even terrible ones, don't have to be the end of the story. That redemption is possible if someone is genuinely willing to do the work. And you think I've done the work? I think you're doing the work. Every day? And I think, Emma took a deep breath, I think I'm ready to start building a real future with you. Not fast, not recklessly, but intentionally. Alexander's smile was brilliant, transforming his face. Yeah, but Alexander, I need you to understand something. There will be hard days. Days where I look at you and see what I lost instead of what I found. Days where the grief comes back and makes me question everything. I know, and I need you to be patient with me, to understand that healing isn't linear, that some wounds don't close, they just become part of the landscape of who we are. I can do that, Alexander said seriously, for as long as it takes, for the rest of my life, if that's what you need. Emma looked around her restaurant, at her brother thriving, at the customers enjoying her food, at the life she'd built from ruins. Then she looked at Alexander, at the man who destroyed her family and somehow become integral to rebuilding it. You know what my father's favorite saying was? Emma asked. What? The best revenge is living well. She smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. I spent so long planning the wrong kind of revenge. But this, she gestured at the restaurant, at their joined hands, at the future stretching before them. This is the right kind. Building something beautiful from something broken. Choosing life over death. Hope over despair. Love over hate. Your father sounds like he was a wise man. He was. And I think, Emma's voice broke, I think he'd be proud of who I'm becoming. Not because I'm forgetting what happened, but because I'm not letting it make me bitter. Because I'm choosing to honor his memory by living the values he taught me. Alexander stood and moved to her side of the table, pulling her into his arms. Emma let herself be held, let herself feel the safety and warmth of being loved by someone who knew her completely. The good, the bad, and the complicated. I love you, Alexander murmured. Not because you forgave me, not because you're giving me a second chance, but because you're the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met. And I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. You don't have to earn me, Alexander. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? Emma pulled back to look at him, wiping tears from her eyes. We just keep choosing each other. Every day, through the hard parts and the easy parts, through the doubt and the certainty. We keep showing up and being honest and doing the work. I can do that. So can I. They stood together in Morrison's kitchen, surrounded by the buzz of life and laughter and second chances. The restaurant bore her father's name, but it represented her future. A future she was building not from revenge, but from resilience. Emma thought about the girl she'd been at 18, broken by loss, consumed by anger, planning destruction. And she thought about the woman she'd become, scarred but strong, hurt but healing, capable of both justice and mercy. Forgiveness hadn't come easily. It had been hard-won, fought for, earned through tears and therapy and countless conversations where she and Alexander had rebuilt trust from nothing. But it had come, not because Alexander deserved it. Maybe he never would. But because Emma deserved to be free of her anger. Because she deserved a future that wasn't defined by her past. Because she deserved to love without reservation and be loved completely in return. Come on, Emma said, pulling Alexander toward the kitchen. I want to show you the new dessert menu. I've been working on a dumpling-inspired dish that I think you'll appreciate. Does it still taste like revenge? Alexander asked with a slight smile. Emma thought about the question, about the journey that had brought them here, about the pain that had forged them, about the love that had transformed them both. No, she said finally, honestly. Now it tastes like possibility, like hope, like a future we're building together, one day at a time. That's my favorite flavor, Alexander said. Emma laughed and led him into the kitchen, where Daniel was already taste-testing the new desserts with his girlfriend. Mrs. Chen sat at the counter, offering unsolicited advice about spice levels. The staff moved around them with practiced efficiency, creating something beautiful from simple ingredients. It was chaotic. It was imperfect. It was real. And as Emma picked up a spoon to share her creation with the people she loved, she thought about her father one more time. "I hope I'm making you proud, Dad," she whispered. And somehow, in the warmth of the kitchen and the laughter of her family and the steady presence of the man who destroyed them and then helped rebuild them, Emma knew he was. Some scars never fully heal, but they can become part of a beautiful, complicated story, one where pain transforms into purpose, where mistakes lead to growth, where even the worst betrayals can eventually give way to forgiveness. Not because forgiveness is easy, but because it's the only way forward. And Emma Hartley was finally ready to move forward. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I learned something through this journey, something my father tried to teach me all along. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's not making your enemy suffer. It's not eye for an eye justice that leaves everyone blind. The best revenge is becoming someone your enemy's victim could forgive. It's building something beautiful from the ruins. It's choosing to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. My father taught me that everyone deserves a second chance, not because they've earned it, but because we all deserve to be free of our anger. Alexander Sterling destroyed my family. That truth will never change. But he spent 15 years trying to become someone better. And I've spent the last year learning that holding on to hate only destroys the person holding it. Some wounds never fully close. Some scars remain forever. But they can become reminders, not of what broke us, but of what we survived, what we built, what we became. This is my father's legacy, not his death, but his values, his belief in second chances, his conviction that people can change if they're genuinely willing to do the work. And this is my revenge, not destroying the man who hurt me, but proving that love is stronger than hate, that forgiveness is braver than vengeance, that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose healing over hurt. My name is Emma Hartley. My father was Robert Hartley. And this is my story of revenge that became redemption, of hate that transformed into love, of wounds that healed into wisdom. The dumplings still taste amazing, by the way. But now they taste like hope.